Black Talk Radio Network is made possible in part with help from the Black Talk Media Project, a North Carolina-based nonprofit engaged in the production and distribution of independent digital black media. Find out more by going to blacktalkradionetwork.com or blacktalkmediaproject.org and look for the menu tab, Crowdfunding Black Media. Black Talk Media Project, helping to provide you with new black media for the new millennium. And opinions expressed by callers, guests, and hosts do not necessarily reflect those of the Black Talk Radio Network and Black Talk Media Project. Black Talk Radio is new black media for the new millennium.
Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to Shifting Paradigms. I am Sister Zion, and we are going to go ahead and get right into our show. We have a very touchy subject, so I don't want anything that we cover to trigger anything in anyone. So I'm telling you beforehand that some of the subject matter will contain content that is sexually related, but this is an issue that I find is at the root of much of the dysfunctional pathology amongst our people. And I personally am an advocate for the healing of my people. I've constantly told my children, taught them to shine a light in dark places. That way, you know, things can't kind of hide out and fester and get worse. So rather than to run from it or to keep it hidden or to keep it in the dark, the best way to deal with any situation is to confront it head on, and not in a combative manner necessarily, but in a manner that will evoke healing and promote a greater sense of who we are in the context of our Creator. And the subject for this morning, this afternoon, is the elephant in the room. And this is one of many elephants in the room, but this is one of the biggest: pedophilia and the black community. The number here to listen in is 641-715-3660. The extension is 549032. Hit pound, hit *6 and 1 to comment or to ask any questions. So we're going to be discussing the elephant in the room, pedophilia and the black community, how we deal with it. Why aren't we dealing with it? Why are we leaving our children in such a vulnerable position? And not only our children in a vulnerable and precarious position, but we ourselves, those who have survived any type of sexualization at a young age. What's going on that we are just allowing our people to go around unhealed and allowing these things to fester, allowing these things to have such a profound impact, negative impact on the lives of our people, and it ends up resulting in so many of the things that we see, such as single-parent homes, female-dominated homes. Good grief. I mean, I can go on and on: drug addiction, drug abuse, substance abuse of any and every kind. It even makes us more vulnerable to our oppressor, as many of these behaviors, these unhealthy sexual behaviors, we have actually picked up from the oppressor. One of the things that white slave owners used to do in order to keep us subjugated and to keep us oppressed was to impose sexual violence against not just our women, but our men as well as our children. And unfortunately, we since for a very long time, but especially since the post-civil rights era, we have allowed much of this to continue to fester, and it has gotten progressively worse, and is really at the root of the destruction of our community. And if we don't start addressing this, not in open forum, not in the midst of the oppressor, in the midst of white people, I believe that we have enough people of our own that are knowledgeable in this particular area that we don't need to go outside of our community and outside of our people to seek their health assistance or even have them chime in on what is going on with us, because there is a special situation in our case dealing with sexual abuse and pedophilia that no other community has really had to endure on the level that we have. And so you can't hide from it. You can't sweep it under a rug and make it go away. It simply is what it is. It's here, and we have to confront it. So we're going to be discussing the elephant in the room, pedophilia, and the black community. One of the reasons why I wanted to cover this, I wanted to do this anyway, but one of the reasons why we're going to be discussing this is because of the recent allegations of sexual molestation against hip-hop legend and founder and former leader of the Zulu Nation, Afrika Bambaataa. Several young men, I believe there's about anywhere from 4 to 5 young men, have come out over the past month and have accused Afrika Bambaataa of basically molesting them as children. And there have even been a couple of bodyguards, some members of the Zulu Nation, who have also said that they have witnessed suspect behavior from him as well in terms of dealing with young boys. A lot of old hip-hop heads are actually hurt and up in arms over this entire situation, especially since the Zulu Nation, as of this past week, basically removed him as being the leader of the Zulu Nation. And not only that, but then we have another hip-hop vet, KRS-One, who came out and for as much stated that he really didn't care what, these young men were saying. And there's some people who really are saying this, not just KRS-One. There are a few other people that are saying it because they're saying that these allegations are more than 30 years old. Like, why are they just not coming out now? And should they have just been quiet? I don't know about that. And I'm going to tell you why. Actually, I do know about that. If these are valid accusations against Afrika Bambaataa, then he deserves no special treatment. He deserves no special grace or mercy, to be honest. And so if it took them 30 years to come to terms with whatever took place in their childhood so that they could, articulate it and actually go forth and try to pursue healing, then I'm all for that. I'm really all for that. I don't know what they would have to benefit necessarily. And some people say, well, they want money, or they just want attention, or there's some agenda. I actually heard someone mention that there's a hip-hop museum underway, and so that this is basically an attack on the legacy of hip-hop in general. And that could very well be. I don't put anything past the oppressive state of racism, white supremacy, as it regards our people. So with that being said, I don't think that we can then take someone who may have seriously been damaged from a psychological, emotional, and spiritual standpoint in terms of being sexually violated as a child and just basically brush them off and say, well, it doesn't matter. It was 30 years ago. Maybe it took 30 years for this person to really come to terms, or for these people to come to terms with what happened to them. Maybe that's just how long it took. So if that's how long it took for them to come to terms with this situation so that they could deal with it and so that they can effectively articulate to somebody and say, look, you know, I know this person is a person who is highly regarded in our community, and I even, you know, I heard a couple of the interviews, they were like, you know, they were fans of his. A couple of the young men actually knew him personally for a while, and they looked up to him. So, you know, I just really believe that this is something that we need to begin to address. There are too many wounded people of our people, too many wounded men, too many wounded women, and they are coming together and they are producing wounded children because they have never dealt with the fact that they were sexualized at a very early age, that some man, some woman took it upon themselves to actually take away that child's innocence, take away their innocence as a child, and put them in a position to where now they're confused or they're angry or they're just not who they should be to their full potential. And it's sad because everybody's going to deal with this in a different way and everybody has to find their own path. But what I think I really want to drive home is that not everybody who is sexually violated at a young age is going to come out at that young age, especially if they don't have a support system that is going forth and advocating for them and saying it's okay. If this happened to you, you need to come forward and let someone know, especially for our boys. If they have been molested at the hands of another woman, let alone another man, because then that opens up a whole nother Pandora's box. So when you just get boys, and we will get into this a little bit later, I have some audio with an interview with Lil Wayne, how Lil Wayne goes into how he was actually sexualized at a very young age by a girl who was older than him. So it's one thing to be sexualized by someone of the opposite sex, but then when you get into someone of the same sex who sexually violates you, then that opens up a whole other ball of wax. And especially for our men, it ends up becoming something very shameful, something that they feel will follow them for the rest of their lives, and that will basically provoke feelings of shame in the sense that their sexuality will always be in question as a result of that. Something that they had no control over whatsoever will then define who they are from a sexual standpoint. So I'm not one to rush these issues. I really think that this is one of those very dire things. I remember many years ago as a Christian, I gave a message about skeletons in people's closets, and it came to me that some people don't even have skeletons. They have rotting corpses in their closet. And the way that you know that it's a rotting corpse, because when a skeleton gets to that state of decay, where it's basically all the flesh is rotted off of it, all the bodily fluids have dried up, and it's just there, and it's just the skeletal remains. You don't smell that. You don't even really know that it's there until you go in the closet and it falls out, or you ramble through the closet and it's there. A corpse, on the other hand, as it rots, you smell it. It stinks. It stinks, and it's so nauseating, and it's so filthy, and it's so disgusting, and it's even disturbing, especially once you know what it is. So a lot of our people don't even have skeletons in their closet. They have skeletons, but they also have rotting corpses. And the way that you know that it's a rotting corpse is because it poisons everything. It stinks in everything that they do. Everything that they do is tainted. They can't even speak a positive word. Everything is negative. Every experience, everything is just this horrible, incessant, dramified quagmire. And it is because they have these rotting corpses in their closets, these issues that they've never dealt with, and that they even from time to time either resuscitate or they allow somebody else to resuscitate them or resurrect them rather. They resurrect them, and they don't resurrect it in a healthy manner to get rid of it so that they can actually bury it and move on. They resurrect it so that they can it's like picking at a scab. And then when they're done, picking at it and resurrecting it, they'll take it and shove it back in the closet so that it can die once again, and it starts the rotting, the decay process all over again. And so it continues to stink. It continues to smell. It never even goes through the entire process of decay because this person has not yet learned how to deal with this issue. We can't continue going on. We can't continue allowing this to happen in our community. We have to learn how to create safe spaces for our people to come together and to discuss what they've experienced at the hands of, their abusers. And yes, we have abusers, we have pedophiles in the Black community. As much as it hurts me to say that, it is what it is. And the sooner that we deal with this and reconcile ourselves with this and begin to hold these people accountable for the dirt and the damage that they do, the better off we'll be. Because we're covering for a lot of pedophiles. Because that's a white person thing. That's what white people do. Only white men rape their daughters. Really? Only white women sleep with their sons. Oh, is that right? Yeah, only white men like little girls. Black men don't be looking at little. Oh, really? Is that so? So we need to basically reconstruct in our minds and take away from these myths that instill a false sense of piety within us. This false piety where, this is somehow the one thing that the oppressor never passed on to us is in error, and it is causing us so much damage and so much harm. The number here is 641-715-3660. The extension is 549032. Hit pound, hit star 6 and 1 to comment or to ask any questions. And if you have an experience, you don't have to let us know your name. If you have an experience that you would like to share, then, and if it's, I'm not trying to disrupt anybody's peace, but, then again, if you're not dealing with this, then it's a false sense of peace. You're not going to have any peace until you confront this. And I'm not saying that you have to go and just make a total wreck of your family. If it happens to have been a family member, if it happens to have been someone that was close, where it's going to cause a whole lot of carnage, there is a way that things have. Sometimes it's not that the situation gets dealt with or doesn't get dealt with. It is how we deal with it. And so we want to deal with this in a healthy manner, but we really need to confront it. And the thing about it is, the thing that irks me is that your oppressor is very much aware of how they have brutally maimed and scarred us psychologically. I just complained about this on Facebook about a month ago, how on Netflix, like every single movie, Black movie on Netflix almost, I would say there's probably about 5 that I can think of right now. Not that I've even seen all the Black movies on Netflix, but, the majority of them are basically about family dysfunction. Somebody in the family got raped by somebody in the family, and everybody's keeping it mum. Everybody's shutting up about it. Nobody wants to rock the boat. And so we have all of these injured, hurting people walking around, never being validated, never being told that, I understand what you've gone through, and I want to help you through this. What can I do to help you through this? What can I do to make sure that this doesn't happen to some other child in our family? We have to become brave about these things. There is no more room for cowardice. We don't have time for that, because this is now a survival situation. And allowing this pathology to fester is actually impeding upon our survival. So we can no longer sit around and play games and act as if this stuff does not happen, and that it does not affect us adversely, and that it does not even impede upon our own our own psychology and how we see ourselves, how we respect ourselves. How is it that we are constantly putting our children in harm's way because we're afraid that if we tell them Uncle so-and-so, who we know has been going around diddling little girls in the family for years, that someone's going, Big Mama's going to get pissed off, everybody in the family is going to get set off, and it's just going to, we still cannot allow this person to continue to have access to children. So we have to find healthy ways to deal with this, but it needs to be dealt with. The number here is 641-715-3660, 549-032. The extension is 549-032. Hit pound. Hit star 6 and 1 to comment or to ask a question. This is from a website called Healthy Place, and it's an article written by Natasha Tracy, and she is actually got this information from an author and a journalist by the name of Robin D. Stone, and it's called No Secrets, No Lies, How Black Families Can Heal from Sexual Abuse. And here are 10 facts about sexual abuse in the African American community. It's more common than you think. In surveys of adults, 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 men report that they were sexually abused as a child. So if you think of that, you're in a room with, I would say, anywhere from 10 to 12 black people. 1 in 4 of those women and 1 in 6 of those men have been sexually abused as a child. And actually, I would dare say that those statistics are a little bit mild. The stats that I'm seeing as of late are actually a little bit more like 1 in 3 and 1 in 4 for men. So I pray that you can absorb that. It's a black thing. Too many black people think that child sexual abuse is more typical among white people. Statistics show that blacks are sexually victimized in childhood at about the same rate as whites. That is because this is one of those things that carried over from slavery, and because we don't have, as a result of integration, we really don't have any safe spaces of our own anymore because of integration. So because we don't have any safe spaces of our own to confront and deal with these issues as a community without outside entities coming in, for the past, I would say 40 to 50 some odd years, these things have been left to fester, and they're not being confronted, and they're not being dealt with. They're being swept under the rug, and it is repeating itself. It has become an incessant cycle in many black families because we're turning a blind eye, and like I said, we don't want to set off Big Mama, and we don't want to upset anybody else in the family. And so we just let it happen, And it goes on, and actually, even in some black families, the child gets blamed. Well, what did you do? Oh, fast-tail gal. What? But you did. He did what? You know, you let it happen. So keep in mind that this is not a white thing, and you know it's not a white thing. Near and present danger. 2/3 of all victims of sexual assault reported to the police were under 18. In nearly 95% of the cases, the offender was a family member or an acquaintance. We have to be careful about who we associate ourselves with, who we bring around our children. Some of us are really too loose and fly with who we bring around our children. I used to subscribe to one sister's page on Facebook, and I think it's called Peas in a Pod for Children. And because I've always tried to advocate for our children in every way possible. But some of the stories were so damaging and so hurtful to hear the incessant neglect of mothers, single mothers, who leave their children with their boyfriends. They're leaving their children with their boyfriends or their new husband, who they barely know, by the way. And these men are then taking advantage of these children when the mother's not there. And sometimes the mother is there. And for whatever reason, there's such a dysfunction that she's just kind of hiding out. There's an element of domestic violence, abuse in her situation with the boyfriend or the husband. So she allows him to sexualize her children so that she won't get beat up. So this is a very deep and very sensitive situation. We're going to go over one more thing, and then we're going to go to break and come back. Rich or poor, poverty, which contributes to violence in many communities, is not seen as a risk factor for child sexual abuse. Abuse is more likely to be reported among low-income families, but is virtually undetected in families whose money or status shields them from authority. So keep this in mind. This is really not an economic issue. This is not a financial issue. This is not an issue where, someone's poor and they have nothing better to do but then to inflict pain on a child and sexualize them. That's not what we're dealing with. We're dealing with something that goes a lot deeper than that. But actually, a child who is raised in a poor home or economically disadvantaged home is actually more likely to have their abuse reported. So when you're looking at a lot of these idyllic homes where, everything looks grand and, they're driving the luxury cars and wearing the best and shopping the best and eating the best, and I'm not saying this is in every case, but if there is an issue of domestic violence or child sexual abuse, it is less likely to be reported because they have a status to uphold. They have a status to maintain. And to have that type of blight on who they are, on their persona in the community and on their status could actually be damaging and hurtful, so they go through extreme measures to cover it up and then sweep it under the rug in an attempt to make it go away. So it's just as likely to happen in a wealthy home as it is to happen in a poor home. And the only difference is that in that poor home, it's more likely that that child will be able to report it and something will get done about it. In the rich home, it's less likely that it will be reported, and if it is reported, probably, especially depending on the social status and the pull and the political clout of said family would have in the community, it may not ever get dealt with, which is sad and actually tragic on so many different levels. And we're going to go ahead and go to break. When we get back, we'll go into some audio about the truth about sexual abuse in the Black community, and also the role that the church plays in this. And then we'll also look into grooming, because molesters groom children. We'll be back. This is Shifting Paradigms. I am Sister Zion, and we will be back in just a moment.
You are listening to Shifting Paradigms with Sister Zion on the Black Talk Radio Network. Have a question or comment? Give her a call at 641-715-3660. Participant code 549-032#. Hit star 6 and 1 to signal the host. And now, back to Sister Zion on Shifting Paradigms.
Okay, and we are back. I'm going to go over a few more of these. Just bear with me in just a moment. We're doing some new things here, so I'm trying to get used to things. Race matters. Black women are far less likely than white women to involve the police in cases of child sexual abuse. Fears about betraying the family, by turning abusers into the system, and distrust of institutions and authorities often lead blacks to remain silent about family business. And that's the weird thing, is that we have actually gotten to a point where the stuff that we should tell, we don't tell. And the stuff that really doesn't matter, that's the stuff that we tell. And it is actually unfortunate that we have the dynamics that we do with the police, with law enforcement, and yet, because we don't have our own support systems, our own legal system, our own way to combat and deal with this issue, which we need, by the way. We need some type of infrastructure, with social infrastructure amongst our people, within our people, to deal with these issues, and we don't. Because if we were able to deal with this amongst our own people, then there really would not be, dealing with law enforcement would be like a last resort type of situation. It's just, I think about the weight of this and how far-reaching this is, and just the many generations that have been destroyed. Some generations of family, because it is so toxic and so destructive, have been wiped out. I've seen whole generations of families wiped out because we don't understand how this affects every aspect of a person's life and how it poisons every aspect of a person's life. We cannot continue to remain silent. That's what I do know. We do have to be careful who we trust with this information. We do have to be careful that they're not able to come in and basically run roughshod into our families and destroy what little support we do have within our families. Boys are also abused. About 14% of all young victims of sexual assault are male, according to police reports. 20% of sexual abuse of boys is committed by women. Keep that in mind. Among black people, homophobia perpetuates the denial of sexual abuse of boys. Just a quick tidbit of information. I remember years ago I worked for a car insurance company, and a friend of mine, she had a teenage son, but she also had a best friend. Her best friend was around her age, and, you know, I was in my 20s at the time. She was in her mid-30s, mid to late 30s. She had a 15-year-old son, and her best girlfriend, her BFF, was the same age as she was. She came home several times to find her BFF in the house with her son, flirting with her son. And she said when she the second time she caught her in the house, you know, just the discourse that she was having with her 15-year-old son made her uncomfortable to the point that she cursed her out. She cursed her out and threw her out of the house. And their friendship, she ended their friendship over that, and I applaud her for that, because a lot of people don't catch on to that, or they think that it's cool that some 30-some-year-old woman is pushing up on a 15-year-old boy. It's really not cool. It's no more cool in that situation than it would be for a 35-year-old man to push up on a 15-year-old girl. Well, he's a man. Yeah, I know you're saying that that's a man. That's a man-child, but let's get the emphasis on child. He's a child. And no 35, 40, I don't care, 25-year-old woman. 20-year-old woman has no business pushing up on a 15-year-old boy. So please, mothers, fathers, do not underestimate these older women around your sons, around your little boys. Cause and effect. Black women report being more severely abused with greater force. They also report more upset, greater long-term effects, and more negative life experiences from sexual abuse than white women. Among the effects is post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, anxiety, eating disorders, substance abuse, self-mutilation, and more. This is one of the things that we're going to get into a little bit later, is the fact that there's this constant bashing of black women. Black women are whores and they're promiscuous. And did you ever stop to think that being sexualized at a very young age had anything to do with that? That her cousin, uncle, brother, whatever, having sex with her before she was really mentally able to deal with that had anything to do with how she behaves. And then, black woman, if that is you, then you are responsible for your own healing. You have to take control of your own healing. You have to see to it that you are healed so that you can raise healthy children, so that you can then go forth and build a healthy nation. But you can't do that if you're running away from this and trying to hide it. A lot of what our people are dealing with, especially concerning this particular situation of pedophilia in our community, is post-traumatic stress disorder. So many of our people are self-medicating. And if they're not self-medicating with alcohol or drugs or sex, they're self-medicating by some other means. And none of it is leading to healing. All of it is to anesthetize me for now so that I can get through the next minute and the next hour, but I'm not really dealing with the issue so that I can get healed and so that I can progress and move forward. We're going to go ahead and get into the truth about sexual abuse in the black community, and also grooming tactics, especially in the church. People think, I don't know what people, thinking in these churches, where you're just turning your children over to random folks. I want to tell you something. If you are a pedophile and you are seeking out children to victimize, several of the places that you're going to go, and understand that a lot of pedophiles live below the radar. So not every pedophile is going to be in the sex offender registry, okay? Not every pedophile is going to be known for being a pedophile. So with that being said, they're going to go where they're going to have the greatest access to a child. They're going to go to the school system and get a job as a teacher, as a coach, as a janitor. They're going to go to the church, and they're going to do what they can to become a youth pastor or work in some other capacity in the church where they're going to have access to a child. So with that in mind, and I don't want to make parents unnecessarily paranoid, what I want to do is make you aware so that you are not overly trusting of people that you do not really know and taking for granted that they are going to do what is within the best interest of your child when you don't even know them. Just because they're in a church, that makes them okay. Or just because they're in a school, that they're okay because the school does background checks. Like I said, not all sex offenders get reported, listed on the sex registry, so sex offender registry. So just because nothing popped up on that person's background when they were when they were applying for this job, this position, doesn't mean anything. The number here is 641-715-3660. Extension is 549032. Hit pound, hit star 6 and 1 to share your experience or your opinion with regard to this matter. The elephant in the room, pedophilia and the black community. We will be back in just a moment.
So how do sexual predators get our children in the American church? Well, the process is called grooming, or it can also be called seducing. But it can be summed up in one word: trust.
This process is very slow and very methodical of gaining their trust. And once they gain that trust, they can achieve their sadistic goals. They start off by trying to find an area and a need that they can fill, like, for example, a teacher or a mentor or a coach. There's a very clear biblical example of this type of thing happening in the book of Genesis between the serpent and Eve, another very well-known story, where the serpent waits for an opportunity when Eve is alone, isolated, and then he moves in and automatically starts manipulating and lying and deceiving. And that deception is key. So this is the same exact thing that happens to victims of sexual abuse.
Right, it's gradual and it's deceptive. So it usually starts off by a friendship of some sort, and they'll befriend even a family member. They'll befriend a single mom. They'll do whatever they can do to get close to the child. They can start a relationship with whoever they need to start a relationship with to get close to the child. And it can start off with non-sexual touch.
Right, they're using this process to push their boundaries, but also to break down the child's defenses slowly over time, so that the child more and more trusts this person that they think will not hurt them at all.
One of the things that a predator does is also get the child to feel a little bit of empowerment, that they're trusted like an adult. Every child wants to be an adult, and every teenager wants to be an adult, and they kind of feel like, oh wow, an adult trusts me. Wow, this is kind of neat. And this is all just to get their fangs in the children.
Once they gain this trust, they begin their attack. The secrets that they've been building up to this point builds up to the big secret of you cannot share this abuse. The child is kept in control and kept quiet through manipulation.
Right, and they use many different tactics, but to sum them up, it's guilt and fear.
We're going to Houston for All-Star. Oh, that's cute. My name is Casey Pope, and I'm a survivor of childhood molestation. Oh, is that gonna be hard for you? When I was first molested, I was 12 years old. I went through some things with my dad. He would fondle me, he would touch me in ways that I knew was inappropriate. The breaking point for me was he came up behind me and just started touching on me. He pushed me on the floor, and he got on top of me, and he stopped.
When I first received the call, I was in shock. I just couldn't understand. I mean, how could someone do this? I had a guilt that all of this time it was like this was happening and I didn't know it.
In high school, I was very angry, very depressed. I felt like I just couldn't take it anymore. I took like 50 plus pills, and I felt myself like getting weak and weaker and weaker, and I just laid there on the floor. I absolutely feel like God was telling me it was not my time. I know that I have a purpose here. God saved me, like He kept me. My life has been so good. You're going through something and you don't want to feel it, you don't want to go through it anymore, so you just want to end it all. But that's not the answer.
People don't want to talk about it. In the Black community, I definitely think that abuse and suicide and depression is swept under the rug in the church.
We're taught growing up, whatever happens in this house stays in this house. No. I seek counseling every day. I wake up and I thank God. So I just want to live out my purpose and help someone. You have to keep going. They say God will never put anything on you that you can't handle. I'm a survivor. Like, I'm still here.
Okay, that was one young lady giving her account of what she endured as a survivor of sexual abuse. And it was actually her father who was the perpetrator. The mother also gave her perspective as to the guilt and the shame that she felt that this had been going on, and she was not aware of it. And that happens a lot to parents. A lot of times parents try to make it go away because they feel guilty. They feel as if they have failed their child. And that's understandable, but at the same time, trying to sweep it under the rug, trying to tell your child to just be quiet about it, don't say anything else about it, that actually will not help your child. Because you have the opportunity, once you become aware of as a parent, that this has happened to your child, you have the ability to heal your child. And you telling your child to be quiet and not to say anything and not to address the situation because you're afraid that you're going to step on someone's toes or hurt someone's feelings is not conducive to your child's healing. You're not going to heal because actually you've been violated as well. As a parent, you've been violated. That hurts. That hurts that happened to your child on your watch, and yet it happened. So you're either going to face it head on and confront it and deal with it, or you're going to make it so that your child ends up suffering for the rest of his or her life. And you're going to suffer for the rest of your life because you're spending all of this energy trying to make it go away or make it not exist. And it exists. And not only does it exist, but it is actually showing up in your child's behavior. And it may even at some level that you're not even aware of make you resentful towards your child. I've seen some parents, and Carla, I'll see you, by the way, I've seen some parents become very resentful of their child. And it's not that they think that the abuse was the child's fault. It's the fact that the abuse is such a painful, hurtful thing, but it's also an inconvenience. And it puts the parents in this very awkward position of, do I confront this? How do I confront this? And if I confront this and things fall out, and it becomes this very ugly thing, what do I do then? What do I do if my family ostracizes me because I've confronted this issue? We're going to go to a caller right now. Caller, thank you for joining me on Shifting Paradigms. How are you this afternoon?
I'm doing good, and you? Just want to start off by saying that I've been listening to your show for a little bit now, and I am actually excited to tune in, and I think you'll be hitting on some pretty good topics. The topic that you on today, my mom was actually raped by my grandmother's husband, which is her brother's father. And, for a long time, I didn't know that. People didn't make it their business to tell me. And then when I found out about it and started asking questions about it, I kind of understand why my mother is the way she is. Been smoking crack since she was 16 years old. And the family, my family had always got on her. Like as a child, I would hear my family like really be talking about my mom, just kind of dogging her out. You understand what I'm saying? And nobody ever told me that, she was raped as a child by your grandmother's husband while your grandmother was basically right there. You understand what I'm saying? So I find it very interesting that after my mother was damaged by people who were supposed to be taking care of her and looking out for her, after she suffered and trying to self-medicate, like what you had just described, she actually get ridiculed behind it. And as her child, understanding what happened to her and understanding why I wasn't properly cared for, I'm very angry about that. And I don't deal with my family right now to this day behind that, and I won't, actually.
Well, brother, thank you for saying that, because that is so common. That is so much more common than what we even want to admit.
Oh, yeah. And she,
occurrence.
So my mom was the type of person that would speak her mind anywhere, anytime. And I picked up that quality from her. And when I'm around, I address the issue and let it be known. And that's what caused the rift between me and the family, because everybody just wants you to shut up and not talk about it. But I'm going to talk about it.
Yes, keep talking about it. The thing about it is, and I'm going to bring in the audio of a brother who was interviewed by Voice Watkins, and the brother had a movie by the name of Wolf, and it basically goes into this whole situation of sexual predators in the black community. And one of the things that the brother says is the fact that that our people really go through extreme measures to try to make this go away, because they don't want to be uncomfortable. But you shouldn't be comfortable. You should not feel comfortable knowing that a child is being sexually violated and damaged for the rest. That should make you uncomfortable. And it should make you uncomfortable enough to do something, not try to run away and hide from it, or try to make it go away as if it never happened. It should provoke you and move you to confront this and deal with this in a constructive manner, so that, A, the person who was victimized and violated is validated in the sense that you acknowledge that what they went through was horrible, and you are then doing what you can to make sure that they heal. That's number one. Number two, and one of the most crucial things that we don't understand is that when we allow the sexual predators to exist among us, it only gets worse. So if we're not confronting these people and putting them out there, then what are we doing? We're actually facilitating them and continuing to abuse and misuse another child. We are laying the groundwork for them to continue on victimizing. So, no, we can't be quiet. Don't be quiet. And like I said, there's a way that you want to handle this so that it's healthy and constructive, but unfortunately there are some families that it doesn't matter how you come at this. It doesn't matter how you come at it. They still don't want to hear it. It's like I said, it's the elephant in the room. But as a people, we have so many elephants in the room that it is basically restricting our ability to move about and to do the things that we need to do so that we can not just survive, but so that we can thrive. This bleeds off into so many aspects of our lives, and it is impeding us from doing what we need to do. We're not going to heal if we're running from this. Thank you so much, brother, for sharing that, because, like I said, it's so common. I just personally, I cannot tell you how many times I've heard similar situations. I've heard similar situations my whole life, and I think that if you are a parent and this has happened to you, do not be afraid to share this with your children. It will give your child, and there's a way that you want to do it. There's an appropriate age to share that, and understand that your child will have a greater insight as to why you do the things that you do. If you keep them in the dark, then all they know is that, well, Mama had a substance abuse issue. I don't know why she was hurt. I know that she was hurting. I know that there had to be something deep going on, but she never shared that with me. And, I never understood. So that leaves a hole in that child. Like I said, this is one of those things that we have to start confronting. And not only that, we can't keep giving these pedophiles a hiding place. That's got to stop. We're giving them a hiding place to continue doing what they're doing. How is it that a 13-year-old girl can get sexually violated, and end up pregnant, and then she's called the whore and the slut because she got pregnant by some older dude that basically raped her and really did, and a lot of these girls are being raped. I actually know a few. When I was growing up, I know a couple of young girls that were 9 and 10 years old, got pregnant at 9 and 10, raped by 20-something-year-old men, but then they're the slut. What is that saying? It's got to stop. Like I said, it bleeds off in so many areas of our lives that we become so used to it that we're not even fully aware of the damage that it's causing. The ninth fact about sex abuse in the Black community is prolific predators, child sex offenders, tend to victimize more often than other sexual offenders. 70% of child sex offenders between 1 and 9 victims. 23% between 10 to 40 victims. I want to get that in your head. That's another reason why we can't continue to run from this and treat it as if it's just going to go away. These predators are often prolific in what they do. So understand that for every one child that you know, there's probably about 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, up to 40 different ones that have also been victimized at the hand of this person. 70% of child sex offenders have had between 1 and 9 victims. 23% of child sex offenders have victimized between 10 to 40 victims. Quiet as it's kept. Child sexual abusers operate in silence and isolation. The tools they use to target and control their prey. Few tend to be violent, which makes them difficult to catch and thwart. So a lot of times we think of this as some very violent thing, and it is a very violent act in and of itself. But the perpetrator, most of these perpetrators are not stupid. They're not going to go and, be overtly abusive and violent. They're going to be kind and nice, just like we heard in the grooming audio, that they're going to basically make this child feel as if what's taking place with them is actually love and not a perversion or an abomination. This is Shifting Paradigm. I am Sister Zion. We will go to a break, and we'll be back in just a moment.
The Black Talk Radio Network is made possible in part with help from the Black Talk Media Project, a North Carolina-based nonprofit engaged in the production and distribution of independent digital black media. Find out more by going to blacktalkradionetwork.com or blacktalkmediaproject.org and look for the menu tab, Crowdfunding Black Media. Black Talk Media Project, helping to provide you with new black media for the new millennium. You are tuned in to Black Talk Radio, new black media for the new millennium.
And we are back. I'm Sister Zion. This is Shifting Paradigms, and we are dealing with the elephant in the room, pedophilia and the black community. And we've had a caller on the line who shared his experience with regard to his mother. And I know, and like I said, his situation and his mother's situation is very tragic, but it is common. And we're so trying to make this go away or make it as if it didn't happen. And it happened. And we have to address it. We have to deal with it. I'm going to go into this interview with the young brother who had the movie Wolf. This is actually, I believe that the interview took place in 2012 between he and Dr. Boyce Brocken. And basically they are discussing what is going on within the black church that sexual abuse is so prolific, and yet there's very little being done to confront it. And it's actually this is actually one of the breeding grounds outside of our own, homes, in various places throughout our community. The church, in and of itself, has become ground zero for sexual molestation. And we have some horrific stories. There's even a story of a congregation down in Florida where the pastor was actually discovered sexually abusing several young women in the congregation, and was actually forbidden, by law to even have any contact with a minor child. So the church, rather than to get rid of the pastor, because they felt that this pastor was just so awesome, decided that they would keep the pastor and that people would just have to do something else with their children. Their children were not allowed to come to the church, and that they would keep the pastor and just throw out all the children, which is very sick and actually very twisted when you think about just that whole dynamic. But that's what we do every day in our communities when we will then take the word of an abuser over that of our children. When we'll go and persecute our children, but this child molester, this predator, is able to move about in silence. I am Sister Zion. This is Shifting Paradigms, and we are discussing the elephant in the room, pedophilia in the black community. And we're here at 641-715-3660, extension 549032. Hit pound, hit star 6 and 1, to ask any questions or to make a comment or to share your experience with regard to this issue. We'll be back in just a moment.
Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from yourblackworld.com, and as you know, I like to bring to you people that are doing things that are exciting in our community, things that I think you should definitely know about. And one of the things that really got my attention this week was a new film that's being released, and the film is called Wolf. And the film is it's been directed and created by Yaki Smith, who is a professor of art, but he teaches film and screen and other things at UT Arlington, things that are related to the production of film. So he's very talented, very experienced, and his film actually centers in on some of those things in the church that we don't necessarily like to talk about. And so to talk about this, I brought Professor Smith on the air. So welcome to Your Black World, brother. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm glad you're here, man. Glad you're here. Now, let's start from the beginning. Tell us about Wolf and what sorts of things does this film explore?
Well, Wolf is the story of a family that discovers their son has been molested by their pastor. And it sort of deals with the fallout from that, the church's cover-up of it, the family's first inability to really deal with it, but eventually sort of coming around. But just the idea of this spiritual abuse that sort of shatters them, and them sort of having to build themselves back together. It also deals with the sort of the cycle of abuse, because for me, I didn't want to create a story where, it was just like this villain who was preying on kids or whatever, but really this is a man who is conflicted. He's a man who has suffered some things himself, and now there's a young boy who, because of what happened to him, is almost growing up to be the same kind of person that he is. And so it's just about sort of trying to break that cycle, speaking out about it, and just sort of putting all that stuff out on the table, because we don't want to talk about it, so it's time to really talk about it.
Wow. Well, that's interesting. I was actually talking to somebody about this the other day, and we were speculating on, the way we as a culture, the way we as a society deal with individuals who are accused of harming children. I mean, really, we all have an instinct, most of us have an instinct that leads to the protection of children. So when you see somebody that harms a child, it makes you want to kill the person, damn near. It definitely makes you want them to suffer as much as they made the child suffer. But then, we kind of came to the conclusion that maybe sometimes, we don't look at it quite the right way, that sometimes it seems that the abuser hates himself as much as everybody else does. Almost like it's like an addiction that's inside of you that they're trying to fight. And so it makes me wonder, if we even as a society even deal with abuse in the kind of thoughtful, compassionate way that we should, as opposed to just saying, you hurt a child, you deserve to die, et cetera. And it's funny you talk about this film because just yesterday I wrote an article, I didn't write it, but one of our bloggers put it up, about a woman in Memphis who found out that are you laughing? Did you see it?
I read that, yeah.
Yeah, she found out that her son's molester, or her son was being molested, and she went to this dude with a baseball bat, and cracked his head open, and you can hear people saying, that's right, he deserved it, but then on the other hand, you're thinking, are we really looking at this in the right way? Now, I want to ask you a question. I don't want to veer too far off the script, here, because I did, talk to you about some of the things I want to ask you about the film in advance. So I want to ask you this. A lot of people attribute recent allegations of sexual abuse to the reason that they've lost faith in the black church. Now, you as a man of faith, and I assume you're at least somewhat familiar with the black church, which is why you chose to dig into it. How do you manage to maintain your faith while talking realistically about what's going on in the church?
Well, this is my thing. I think one of the things that we have a tendency to do is we equate God with church. And I hate to say that, but those are two different entities. And the issue is this. Because we do that, the minute that the man of God or your preacher or someone who's in the church does something to you, you leave. You turn away from the church as a whole. You turn away from God. You turn away from spirituality. You leave that because you're angry at the man and you're blaming God for something that the man did. And for me, it's like I have to always keep something in mind that that's a man. Not that he isn't a godly man, not that, because, like I said, I grew up in the church. I'm still very much a part of the church. I go to the Potter's house here in Dallas. But, he's a man. And yes, we listen to that man guides us, and that man counsels us. However, that man is capable of doing the same thing that I'm capable of doing. And I have to look at it in that way, that man can be just as flawed as I am. That doesn't mean that, I excuse his actions, but what that does mean is that shouldn't shatter my faith. It can't shatter my faith. It might make me move to another church because I'm like, no, I don't want to sit under somebody who's doing this thing, but it can't shatter my faith because my faith is not in a man, it's in God. And I think that's where we get the thing mixed up. You don't have faith in the church, you have faith in God, and God will lead you and guide you to the right place. I can't hear you, man, at all.
You know what? They couldn't hear me either because we had to mute the volume. Sorry about that, brother.
That's all right.
So, as you can tell, I am not a filmmaker. If I was, the audio would be all jacked up. But so, as you did your film, what surprised you as you did the research, for this film, in terms of sex abuse in the black church?
The thing that surprised me, and I shouldn't even say it surprised me because the reason I did it is because I already knew this, but I guess it is still shocking to me that this thing happens so much and we refuse to talk about it. I mean, I know people personally who have been abused sexually in the church. And they were told to be silent. They were told not to say anything, that, we don't want to ruffle any feathers, just sort of let this thing die away. You'll get over it. It's all good. And that's still shocking to me that someone could hurt even your loved one, because I know people whose fathers and mothers told them to be silent. And it shocks me that as a church, we talk about love, and we talk about forgiveness, and we talk about letting anybody come in, but then when something like this happens, we just totally shut down. We don't want to deal with it. And we have so many people, like you said, who have ran away from the church, and a lot of times we blame them. We don't blame the person who did it to them. Obviously, they're making it up. Obviously, they're just trying to destroy the body of Christ and all that stuff. When in fact, it's sad. It's sad that we don't love those people and bring them back in and find out what is at the root of the issue. Again, I'm not saying you take the preacher out and beat him with a bat, but I am saying that you sit that man down, you find out what that man's problem is, you get him the help that he needs. If he has an issue that he can't repair, then you don't let him near any other kids. But, you try to get to the root of the issue. And I think that's the thing that really shocks me is that we don't do that. We just sort of deal with the surface of it. We don't really want to dig down and get to the root. But until we get to the root, it's going to keep happening.
Well, it's interesting because the most famous case of molestation in the church is the one that involves, Bishop Eddie Longstroke and Eddie Long. Sorry, I shouldn't use it, but Eddie Long and what he did to those boys. I've written about it a lot, and it repulsed me. And what also repulsed me is that when it comes to a lot of this, this sexual abuse that you mentioned, there is a disturbing silence. There is kind of this attitude that certain people are just kind of beyond reproach, that no matter what they do to anybody, we kind of look the other way. And there are people who will accept any explanation, any lie, even if it's at the expense of a child being harmed. And I don't understand that. Now, you mentioned that you finished the final version of the script for Wolf before the Eddie Long incident took place. So you actually incorporated some of the Eddie Long story into the script. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, like I had started writing this script at least 6 or 7 months before that happened. And man, literally the minute that I said, all right, I got my first draft done, looked on CNN and there was Eddie Long, was accused of molesting these boys. And so of course I started doing research and trying to find out how did this go on for so long? And is this true? Because, you have to look at both sides. Is it true or is it not? You know what I mean? And so I'm just looking and digging into it, and as I'm reading, I'm just like, this is like crazy, because it's obvious that some people in his church knew all along or suspected that these things were happening, and they did nothing. Not only that, one of the boys there says that Eddie would use scripture to sort of sway him into doing some of these things. What happens between us is between us and God, and sort of using the scripture to manipulate his relationship. And so, some of that wound up in my script. The idea, again, of people just not wanting to believe it, even though the evidence is right in their face. Even though you have 4 different boys who, I don't even know if those guys knew one another, who are coming out and giving you very similar stories as to what happened to them, people still said, no, there's no way that Bishop Eddie Long could have done that. He's a man of God, and blah, 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 blah. And so the whole idea of the secrets, the whole idea of the sort of cycle, because again, the more I researched back, and I don't know if any of this is true, but I started finding stories about physical abuse that Eddie had inflicted on his wife years and years and years ago, against his first wife. And so just going back and just figuring out, like, where did this go wrong? Because for me, it's like, I don't think anybody is born a pedophile. I don't think any man is born a batterer. I think there are things that have happened to us in our lives, and everybody processes grief and pain in different ways. And I just feel like there's something down that line that has happened that has not been dealt with. And so all of those sort of plot points wound up in my film.
Interesting. Well, that's an interesting point of view you have, and I agree with you. I think what probably bothered me the most, 2 things bothered me the most about the Eddie Long situation. One was that, children are already trusting and very vulnerable, and for you to, present yourself as a father figure and then, harm them sexually is incredibly problematic. I mean, even if you can somehow, not necessarily excuse, but somehow understand how a person might have an unhealthy attraction that they can't control, even if they have something inside of them that just makes them want children, you may not be able to necessarily blame them for that, but you can blame them for acting on that impulse. It's just like if I see an attractive woman, everything inside of me as a man might want to make a move, or whatever. But if I know in my heart that I'm not supposed to make a move on that woman because either I'm committed or she's committed or it's somebody I just shouldn't, be with, whatever, then it's up to me as a man to stop that and to say, no, this is not appropriate, right? So I think that bothered me. The second thing that really bothered me about Eddie Long was the lie, the fact that he told his congregation from the jump, the truth will come out, I will release all information and all of that. And then later on, he settles everything behind closed doors, and nobody really holds him accountable for that. And that's a bold-faced lie, and I think that's a problem. Now, let's get back to you, though, and get back to your film. How do you balance between, sort of focusing on the plight of the victim versus understanding the plight of the predator? Because I think, because it is interesting, because most of the time, just like Terry Williams says in her book, Black Pain, that hurt people hurt people. So usually a predator started off as a victim, right? So how do you balance those two?
Well, I think in the film, what I really try to do is, again, go back to trying to find out what the root is. What would have caused somebody to have inflicted this kind of pain on another human being? And so I go back into sort of the history of, or I guess the backstory of this predator, and sort of give you a glimpse of from whence he came and sort of how he evolved from just being an innocent little boy into being a predator. Another thing that I do is the young boy who is now being victimized, he now has these sort of predatory traits already, even at 16. He's already sort of, going into that predator sort of rape kind of mindset because of what has happened to him for so long. And so what I'm doing is I'm just showing you, like, because this happens to this person, they wind up doing this. And because this happens to that person, they wind up doing this. And so what ends up happening is you may hate the predator for half of the film, but at some point, and I don't want to give too much away, you'll see from whence he came, and then even you, in a way, say, wow, like, I sort of sympathized with him. Like, I don't excuse him. I still don't quite understand why he did what he did, but I know that he's holding on to a pain that he can't even let go of. And so I'm sort of balancing between those two stories.
Well, you know, I really like I like that approach. I mean, I think it's a thoughtful approach. You know, it in a way it you know, it reminds me of just that one conversation that I had with Tyler Perry. And I don't have any reason to really talk to Tyler, so we haven't talked since then. But that one time when we did talk for a little bit, I remember he was talking about how his films, even though some of it's silly, you know, can be defined as buffoonery in certain aspects, but he said that, you know, his argument, and you can take it or leave it, but he said that his films are a way to help people deal with the pain and the trauma they've experienced, which manifests itself in unhealthy ways, like through, you know, addiction, abuse, and all these other things. And I think that when you look at our community, you do see a lot of, you know, a lot of that abuse, you know, a lot of this pain that comes from oppression and how we oppress one another that manifests itself in so many ugly ways. You know, you got these older men chasing younger girls, and you know, and what's going on in terms of drug addiction and all these other things. So I think that it's important to utilize. I like the fact that you're utilizing the power of a very good film to sort of really dig into those issues and to really ultimately.
Well, and I think.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And I'm, you know, I'm not saying anything negative about Tyler at all when I'm about to say this, but I think one of the reasons, again, why. You know, these things keep happening is because we're not making work that's really challenging. We're making work that is very surface. It alludes to things, or it sort of gives you the idea of maybe this or that happened, but we're not really like dealing with the core and the root, like I keep saying. And I think we need more filmmakers who are bold enough, and I'm not like trying to toot my own horn with it, but I'm just saying we need people who are bold enough. You know, I think about when Spike was Spike in the 80s and the 90s, Spike was bold. And Spike didn't mind telling you what it was, how it was. He didn't care if he made you mad. He didn't care if he insulted you, because what he was trying to do was make you change. And I think that's what we need. We have to have work that it isn't. Look, every time I show where people are like, I am so uncomfortable. And guess what? You're supposed to be uncomfortable. Because when you see a child being molested, you should be uncomfortable. When you see a preacher spiritually abusing people, you should be uncomfortable enough to speak up and say something. And so I want to make you uncomfortable, because hopefully your discomfort will make you go out and say something. And we need more work like that, because that is everybody goes to the movies. And we need more work like this to really, really like challenge people and say, look, this is what you need to be doing to stop this stuff from happening.
Okay. All right. Well, you know, that's enough said, man. So let me ask you this last question. Okay. So there you go. In your face, Tyler Perry. Okay.
No, I didn't do it like that. I didn't do it. Hey,
no,
I respect Tyler. I respect Tyler. I respect him.
Yeah, I'm messing with you, man. I agree. I mean, you know, you know, when you talk about Tyler's films, I mean, I had to be honest and tell him, look, I'm not gonna go see probably at least 80% of the stuff you made, but I understand why some people might appreciate it, and I respect you for your achievements, right? And that's kind of where you go. And then at that point, you go and you make your own contribution to the world and leave it at that, you know. So let me ask you this. Okay, so now obviously we're gonna feature, you know, whatever we can find on your film on Your Black World and on our in our companion section, Just Real Film. It's spelled REEL for people that want to go check it out. But also, I want to ask you, first of all, you know, how has the film done so far? You know, what sorts of, you know, respect has it received? You know, how was it personally gratifying for you as well? And also, where can people go to find out more about it?
All right. Well, the first question is, the film has been doing really well. We premiered at South by Southwest in March. We went on to win Best Texas Feature at the Dallas International Film Festival. We won an Audience Choice Award at the Little Rock Film Festival. We won the Saatchi & Saatchi Producers Award at the Martha's Vineyard African American Film Festival. And we've just been screening all over the place. We were just in New York, in Chicago. Again, Martha's Vineyard. We'll be in Alabama next week. We'll be in New Orleans soon. We'll be in New York again. We'll be in Canada. We'll be anyway, we're in a lot of places, DC as well. So it's been really received really well, and the critics, some critics don't like it, but most people really like it and like what it's trying to sort of say. And to find out more about the film, you can just go to ExodusFilmworks.com, which is my website. Facebook, Wolf Movie, Twitter, Exodus Filmworks. You can find me at Twitter at Yaki80. And I post everything on there. I do video blogs on my Facebook page, which I think is Yaki80 as well, or Yaki, something like that. So yeah, just get on there and we post all of the screenings. We do video blogs. We post some of the reviews that come out, because there are reviews coming out like every week about the film. And that's a way to really keep up with the film and find out when it's sort of coming to a city near you.
Okay, and we are back. This is Shifting Paradigms. I'm Sister Zion, and before we go to our final break, I just want to address, I really appreciate his insight. The young man, Yaki, I believe his name is, the creator of this film called Wolf, and like I said, this is an interview. It's actually kind of dated. It was in 2012, I believe, and but I haven't seen the movie, but just his explanation of the premise of the movie, if you will, I don't know. I know that these people who are predators are human, and that there is something at the root of the reason why they abuse, but there's actually a choice involved in this. There are many of us who have been sexually abused and who are survivors, myself included, and who have not gone on to abuse other people. And caller, I see you. We'll get to you after we come back from break, but I just wanted to make that clear, because I don't want to make this about the abuser. Really, we want to deal with the survivors and the people who are, who are wounded but haven't been victimizing other people. Because if you've been victimizing other people, you really need help. The recidivism rate amongst pedophiles and sexual predators is that of well over 95%. And in recent years, because of the European mindset of trying to make everything that is abominable and perverted to kind of usher that in, they're trying to soften the numbers on that. But for many years, studies have shown that there is a very high recidivist rate among child sexual predators, and we can't ignore that. So if you have been victimizing someone, yes, you need help. But my concern is with those who are survivors, who have been victimized, and who are not going on to victimize other people. And at the end of the day, like I said, we want to be careful how we deal with this. We don't want to put our children in greater jeopardy. I know that there was one mother who found out that her child's father had molested her, and after she found out from the child disclosed everything. The child actually went to daycare and disclosed to the daycare worker. Got a call at work saying, this is what your daughter is saying that her father did to her. The mother, then feeling very hurt, very confused, very frustrated, actually thought that, entertained, and she shared this with me, that she entertained actually setting this person up and possibly just killing him. She wanted to wipe him off the planet. And as a mother, I can't blame her. But what happened as we prayed, that wasn't in her to take someone's life as much as she wanted to. Her issue was that if I botch this, and it's not been proven whether, in a court of law that he did anything to my child, then I'm leaving my child vulnerable to this person again. And then not only am I going to end up in a situation where I've even either taken his life or I've tried to take his life and failed, but then my child can be taken away from me and actually placed in his care for his custody. And then I've lost all the way around. So there has to be a constructive way as much as possible to deal with it. But the best thing you can really do, especially since these people like to move stealthily, they move in isolation and secret and in a secret manner. They're very secretive. So the best thing you can do for them is to put them out on Front Street and to let them know that you know, I see you. I know who you are. I know what you've done. I know what you're capable of. And I'm not going to allow you to do this to another child. So if I have to bring law enforcement into this equation, then that's what I'm going to do. But you're not going to victimize another child. This is Shifting Paradigms. I'm Sister Zion. We will be right back in just a moment.
No, I'm not a writer. Okay.
Black Talk Radio, since 2008, providing new black media for the masses.
Okay, and we are back. I have a caller on the line. Caller, thank you for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
I'm fine, thank you. What would you like to share with us today concerning the elephant in the room, pedophilia in the black community?
First of all, I'd like to say, like I said, how you doing, and how you doing all the call, anybody else that call in and listening. To me, I hate to say it. No, I take that back. I'm proud to say that I think it's a European problem. I think that almost everything that happens that I can see, don't get me wrong, we are responsible for the actions that we commit, that we do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But this wrongness, this type of behavior, and how it goes on, to me, it comes from a European standpoint, a European way of mind, a European way of socializing through dominance and through powerful type of weight throwing behavior, and I think about the Vatican. You know what I mean? I think about the church, period, and I think about how it's supposed to be. Just common sense tells you. You know what I mean? And I always thank my son for this, because young as he was, very wise. Common sense tells you, if you paying attention, almost within each and every, I'll say, black church, each and every black church is some kind of drama that it's past just human activity, such as, I don't like her for, just because they look weird. You know what I mean? I don't know them yet. You know what I'm saying? So once you get to know them, everything's cool. It's past that. I don't like them because her aunt slept with such and such and this and that, and it was forced and all kind of other stuff. It wasn't properly prosecuted or whatever. There's always some kind of drama like that. There's always some kind of drama with older versus with younger, taking advantage of the younger. Always, from molestation to the pedophilia to even some of the consensual things within the church. You see that they're taking advantage of the young minds, whether it's the older men, most of the time older men to the younger girls, but even so with the older women to the younger boys, you see they might be of age, but you see us taking advantage of the mind frame, their thought process within the religion, within how they feel about God, within what they're being taught. And everything in my eyes, from what I know so far, everything that in the black church comes from, most of them, that I've seen, that come from a European standpoint, all of them have that same thing going on, that same type of misbehavior going on. And to me, like I said, it's a European behavior. It's I don't know, you go far back as you can. King James and whoever else, whatever. They've always had been homosexual activity, pedophilia.
Yeah, and I understand, brother. I truly understand what you're saying. I've actually addressed that. The fact that this is actually a pathology that has been passed on from oppressor to the oppressee. But even in that same instance, how we deal with it is what is actually perpetuating and doing the most harm. And yes, it is by all means a European mindset. The whole man-boy love situation, that is actually derived, and it comes out of Greek and Greco-Roman belief, out of a Greco-Roman belief system. That whole situation of pedophilia in general. However, how we are dealing with it is inflicting more pain and more harm because we are trying to make it not exist. We are trying to say that this only happens amongst white people, and it doesn't happen among us. But in fact, it does happen among us, and that's why so many of our people are screwed up psychologically, spiritually, and in every other respect, because we're trying to make this a white thing when it is affecting our community as well. And usually whatever happens with them is actually 10 to 20 times, sometimes 50 times worse for us. So yes, it comes from white culture, but because of where we are and the situation that we're in, this has been inflicted on us, and we have taken this on. So we have to then decide, how are we going to deal with this so that our people are healing from this, and so that we're not perpetuating this throughout the generations and allowing this to fester and to continue on.
I think that within our churches, it has to be, the central point has to be Afrocentric, because until that happens, until we see Jesus.
But what does that mean? Because I understand to some extent what you're getting at, but melanated people are worldwide. I understand that according in this, and we'll get into this in another show, because I really want to get into this out of Africa theory, because melanated people are worldwide. We are Aboriginal people. We exist throughout the planet on every continent. And the only place that Caucasian people can even lay claim to is the Caucasus Mountains. So understand that when you say Afrocentric, it's like throwing a net over everything, a continent that consists of different countries, cultures, languages, and systems. So when you say
Afrocentric, when I say Afrocentric, I mean coming from a now civilization standpoint. You know what I mean? Coming from that far back, something before the Europeans thought and
something that's not something that hasn't been painted by European methods.
Seeing the white God, seeing these practices of breaking bread and the drinking of the wine, and just once all of those things begin to change, you take out, you find out the stories of the Bible, where they come from. Because truth be told, I grew up in all of that. I grew up in I was taken to a family that were they were very godly. Oh man, they every Sunday, of course, they go to church, but every Tuesday and Thursday. They had the Fifth Sunday reunion. One of their children went on to be famous. He's famous in the gospel scene. You know what I mean? I spent maybe 5 or 6 years of my childhood around them or living with them. And shortly after that, I got introduced to a lot of other things, such as Buddhism and aspects of the Muslim faith and things like that. And I held on to them Christian values, but I began to just see, like, in church, it goes as far as Genesis, and that's it. They give you a little bit of where it comes from and this and that, whatever, but they never it's like that's the beginning of time. That's the beginning of everything. And once you see that, that's not the beginning of everything. That's not when everything started. I think the more in black churches that people start to see that and start to question those things, I really believe this. I really do believe this. Those practices will change. Not saying people won't still do them, but it'll be more talked about. Yeah, you might still get the busting of the heads and things like that, but it won't be an elephant in the room that people are afraid to talk about. We will actually talk about these things, and true healing will come from that, in my eyes. You know what you understand what I'm trying to say?
I understand what you're trying to say, and to a large extent, I really do agree. And I think the way that we approach Scripture, the way that we approach our history as a people, has to be derived from another perspective and not from the perspective of our oppressor, which is unfortunately a Christianized mentality, because a lot of what Christianity does is whitewash everything. And I personally, without getting too deep into this and getting off topic, I personally, at the age of 7, understood, having read the Bible, that just given the geographic location of where these scriptures took place, these people were melanated people, and there was no way that the things that were occurring were happening amongst people who were in any way, shape, or form Caucasoid. So I knew this as a child, and having this understanding as a child, and then growing up and changing belief systems from a Christian mind, from a Christian Eurocentric mindset, I was then able to understand Scripture as a history, and not just, something that was so far removed from me that I couldn't relate to it because it was talking about white people, because it's really not about white people at all. As a matter of fact, there's really the only way that white people are even ever mentioned in Scripture is that they are actually referred to as the heathen. They are never referred to as a part of us. So with that being said, I appreciate you calling, brother, and sharing your thoughts with us. Like I said, I really, at this juncture, want to drive home the point, and I do agree that once we get out of this Eurocentric mindset of how we deal with issues, trying to make stuff go away, trying to ignore it, or trying to pretend as if it never happened from the jump, that is not helping us. That is not healing us. It is damaging marriages. It is damaging parent-child relationships. It is damaging us in every single respect. In every respect, it is damaging us. So we have to get to a point to where we can openly, amongst each other, discuss this in a healthy manner and make sure that we put these pedophiles, these sexual predators on notice. There are repercussions. We're not going to allow you to continue to abuse and victimize our children. We're just not. We see you. We know who you are. We know where you are. We know what your daughter said. We know what your niece said, what your granddaughter said. We're not going to allow this to continue going on. Your grandson has told us this. We're not going to continue to allow this to happen. But this is where we need to get back to us having our own. We shouldn't have to go out to the municipal law enforcement of our cities, our counties, and our states to deal with issues that should be taken care of amongst us. Because trust me, like I said, I don't think that people fully understand. The only way that some of these things leak out in other ethnic communities is that they go unchecked. It gets to the point that, law enforcement from the outside has no other choice but to come in and intervene. But for the most part, in other ethnic communities, they handle this amongst themselves. And that's what we need to start doing, is handling this amongst ourselves. We're going to go into the audio, and this is from an NPR interview basically dealing specifically with the taboo of black boys and molestation. Because, like I said, it carries a stigma with it that really doesn't apply to females, especially females who may have been molested by the opposite sex. Now, when we get into females who have been molested by the same sex, it kind of changes that dynamic to a similar situation, because it's something that's rarely ever talked about. But even former Miss America Vanessa Williams, I believe it was, she admitted to being sexually molested by a woman, I believe it was at the age of 8 or 9, somewhere along those lines. So we don't hear about it often because there's a stigma attached to that, but it does happen. This is Shifting Paradigms. We're discussing the elephant in the room, pedophilia and the black community.
I'm Michelle Martin, and this is Tell Me More from NPR News. Coming up, my commentary. But first, it's time to go behind closed doors. That's our weekly conversation where we try to talk about issues that people, well, don't generally like to talk about, often because of stigma or shame. And this is another delicate topic. Now, if you follow entertainment, especially some of the top African-American divas, then you may have noticed that a number of them, Oprah, of course, and most recently Monique, have chosen to disclose painful experiences of sexual abuse when they were young. Now, each has said she hoped that by coming forward, she might in some way spare another youngster that experience, or perhaps caution adults about how better to protect their daughters. But if some female celebrities have raised a red flag about sexual abuse, it seems to be a very different story with their male counterparts, where the issue is often dismissed or played for laughs. For example, here's Lil Wayne on the late-night show Jimmy Kimmel Live. He's talking about losing his virginity at age 11.
The girl was older than me, and she cut the lights off. I don't know what happened. She pulled my pants down.
Oh, boy. How much older was she?
I was 11. She was like 14, and when she pulled my pants down, when I went to feel her, like, what are you doing? I felt she was naked, so I just stopped, like, oh.
You feel like that affected you negatively in your adulthood?
It did, yeah.
He's not alone. Rappers T.I., T-Pain, Flavor Flav have all talked about being introduced to sex at an age most people would consider entirely too young, and few have seen it or identified it as abuse. So we wanted to take a moment to talk about this, and I have to warn our listeners at this point that there will be some explicit sexual language in this conversation, so if that's not appropriate for you, we want you to be aware. We've called Dr. Carl Bell, a clinical professor of psychiatry and public health at the University of Illinois at Chicago. Sylvia Coleman, she's an award-winning health journalist and advocate for sexual abuse survivors. She is a survivor herself. And in 2008, with a grant from the Leeway Foundation, Coleman launched the Black Survivors Network, a national online support group and resource center for black sexual abuse victims. And also with us is Talib Darrell. He is also a survivor of sexual abuse. I thank you all so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Bell, I wanted to set the table with some numbers that we've gotten from the National Child Abuse and Neglect Data System. It's a data set that is maintained by Cornell University. And in 2007, the latest numbers they had said that there were some 25,000 reported incidences of sexual abuse of females under 12, but there were 14,000 cases of boys under 12, which means it's not as commonly reported, but nevertheless not a small number. And I wanted to ask, does this sound right to you? Do these numbers sound right?
It's probably more common than that. A lot of people get abused, and the problem is we tend to deny it and tend to hide it away.
What's your reaction when you hear a celebrity like Lil Wayne talking about this kind of experience in the way that he did? I'm just wondering how you reacted to that exchange that we just heard.
I guess it's interesting because part of the difficulty is if you've been abused, if you catastrophize the incident, you're actually more at risk for developing psychiatric symptoms than if you would deal with it in a much more appropriate way, a much more balanced way. The way that you protect yourself against a horrible incident is to develop a sense of mastery or a sense of power around the incident.
Do you think it's a double standard when it comes to boys? And I'm sitting here, I'm thinking to myself, if this were a girl talking about being 11 years old, and having a 14-year-old boy or experimenting with her. I mean, I'm just trying to imagine, would people be laughing? Would they think that was funny?
No, absolutely not. But boys, see, for boys, having your cherry busted is a mark of manhood. You get somebody pregnant, your father goes, yeah, you're a real man now. If you're a girl and you get pregnant, then you're stigmatized and kicked out of life. So it's a double standard.
Tilly, how do you react to Lil Wayne's comments?
I think that it's a common reaction amongst males. A lot of us, I know at least for myself, it was sort of viewed as a rites of passage, so a lot of men don't take it too serious. Most men don't even understand that, you know, they were sexually abused. So when interviewed, like someone like Lil Wayne interviewed about the situation, to him or to individuals like him, it's like, you know, a cool thing to have had happen to you.
Can you tell us what happened to you?
I had more than one account, but the first one that I could remember, I had to be maybe 10, probably 9. And she was 13 or 14. You know, probably the same thing had happened to her. So we were together, and we were in a room playing house, like children do. They play house. And my cousin said, well, I'll be the mommy, you be the daddy. And I was like, all right, cool. But I didn't understand what that was. And she, you know, pretty much did the same thing to me. What happened to Lil Wayne, she pulled my pants down, and, you know, she showed me how to masturbate.
Did you remember thinking at the time that something wasn't right? And I'm wondering, did you ever tell anybody? Or
I probably shared it with my brothers, but at the time I definitely felt that something wasn't right about it. But it was like, wow, this is happening to me. You know, I heard about it, I saw images of it on TV, and now it's happening to me. And it was like thumbs up.
You know, Michelle, this is Dr. Bell. There are two things here. One is that when you're young, you really don't understand as an adult because you're a child. So there might be a feeling of, something's a little wrong here, but I'm not real sure what that is. Then you get older and you really understand what did happen. The other thing we're hearing is that there's a lot of sexual play in younger children. And the other thing is this was heterosexual. And so if you throw in the element of homosexual behavior, it becomes even more difficult for people to disclose.
Do you think that is in part why, because it's heterosexual behavior, that kids don't think to discuss it with their parents, or they think it's more normal, if you will, or more acceptable, Dr. Bell?
You know, there have been some studies on boys. And in one study I remember, by the age of 18, about a third of boys have had some sort of homosexual experience culminating in an orgasm. So there's mutual masturbation, there's sexual play. Now the question is, if they're children under, say, 14 or 15, is that abuse? It's certainly wrong, because you shouldn't be doing that with children. And absolutely, if you're over 18, that's absolutely, clearly abuse. But it's actually a very common phenomenon in society that we don't talk about, especially boys or men, because, you know, men don't talk. We run or fight. Women, on the other hand, because they're more intelligent, actually talk to each other.
Well, thank you for that. I'll be answering the mail on that, but I'll seek your guidance when I do. So
good luck. Good luck.
Sylvia, given what we've talked about here, when men do approach your network, why do you think they do? What gets them there?
A lot of men hear about it through word of mouth, and men will approach me after I do a workshop. You know, once I've initially had a conversation with them, they feel more open to join a network. And one of the things that blacksurvivors.org provides is the anonymity. You can come and be a part of that network and share this experience and get advice without having to deal with the shame that surrounds this issue.
If you're just joining us, this is Tell Me More from NPR News. We're talking about the sexual abuse of boys, and we're speaking with Sylvia Coleman, the founder of the Black Survivors Network, Dr. Carl Bell from the University of Illinois at Chicago, and Talib Darrell, who is a survivor. And I want to mention once again to our listeners that some parts of our conversation we're using some fairly explicit language, so if you don't feel that that's appropriate for you at this time, this is maybe a good time to make another choice. Sylvia, when men have disclosed that this has happened to them, have they had any negative reaction, from peers? Is that another reason why perhaps people don't talk about it?
Oh, absolutely. This experience is celebrated and considered a rite of passage among boys who have this experience with a woman. But if this experience comes at the hands of a male perpetrator, then they're viewed in a negative light. And it becomes very difficult for men to disclose because there is still a lot of stigma and misconception in society that men are not sexually abused. And to risk losing your macho image is a very big deal to a lot of men.
Dr. Bell, do you have some advice for us? I'm sure there are people who will be listening to this conversation saying, oh, I'm a parent, is there something I should be doing differently?
The best thing to realize is that risk factors, being sexually abused, seeing daddy beat up mommy, whatever those risk factors are not automatically predictive of bad outcomes because people have protective factors in their lives. They have safety, they have adults who love and care about them. They have the capacity to learn social and emotional skills. They have the capacity to develop a sense of power. They have the capacity to develop spirituality. And so those horrible traumatic experiences are not automatically predictors of remaining a victim. You can, in fact, become a survivor. And if you're really lucky and work very hard, you can become a conqueror, which is a person who begins to put systems in place to protect other people and to help other people recover from these things.
Talib, can I have a final thought from you? Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us?
One thing that I found in being able to disclose this information and deal with this obviously painful experience is you find a new sense of power and freedom in being able to talk about it. Even sometimes down to the details, to be able to let go of that fear is very empowering, and it will transform your life.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for that. Sylvia, final thought from you?
Yes, I would like to just encourage people that whether it's blacksurvivors.org or if it's therapy or a support group or if it's their pastor, to make sure that you seek help. And also make sure that you teach your child about sexual abuse as early as possible. And also, if they are adults, then to seek the help that they need and the support system around them, because there are so many different options and so many different ways to heal and become victorious.
Dr. Bell, I appreciate that the back end of this process of having an incident like this does not have to rule your life. But what about on the front end? Are there other things we should be thinking about?
No. We've written grants for sexual assault and sexual abuse prevention, and we've got to figure out to change the society's concept of girls, because girls are more sexually abused than boys. We've got to change society's concept and how they value children so that we don't exploit and take advantage of helpless children or helpless people. We've got to change men, because men frequently are the people doing the abusing. But there are systems, strong families, strong communication in families, teaching children social and emotional skills, keeps them out of that harm's way. And again, giving children the opportunity to show mastery and growth and strength and resiliency. Frederick Douglass said it is easier to raise strong children than fix broken men. And that's exactly the case.
Dr. Carl Bell is a clinical professor of psychiatry and public health at the University of Illinois at Chicago. He was kind enough to join us from Bosco Studios in Chicago. We were also joined by Sylvia Coleman, the author of the book Creating a New Normal and creator of the Black Survivors Network for Survivors of Sexual Abuse, and we'll have a link to the network on our homepage. That's the Tell Me More page at npr.org. We were also joined by Talib Darrell, a massage therapist in Philadelphia, and he was kind enough to share his story with us today from WRTI at Temple University. I thank you all so much for speaking with us.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, very quickly before we wind everything up, once again, this is Shifting Paradigms. I'm Sister Zion, and we have been discussing the elephant in the room, pedophilia and the black community on Black Talk Radio Network's website. under Shifting Paradigms, there are a number of resources that I have listed. So if this is something that you or someone that you know are dealing with, then please take advantage of these resources. See what you can do that is constructive to the healing of our people so that we can basically begin to deal with these issues in a healthy manner and provoke healing. We're not healing right now because we're trying to make it not exist. We're trying to solely say that this only belongs, only white people do this. And yet we all know that that's not true. So we have to confront it. We have to deal with it in a constructive manner so that we can heal. And like I said, those resources are there at blacktalkradionetwork.com, and it's under Shifting Paradigms for this particular podcast specifically. I will be off for the next couple of weeks. I am moving. I'm in the process of moving. So just keep us in prayer. Also understand that we need to pray for our people, period. We need to pray for our people. We need to meditate on what it is that we need to do for the benefit and the health and safety and the empowerment and betterment of our people. I pray that this program has been helpful and a blessing to you. Remember, mediocrity hates greatness. Be great and let them hate. Shalom. I'll see you in a couple of weeks.